Welcome to AI on Tap, your go-to podcast for insights from the front lines of technology. Brought to you by AI Venture Pulse. I'm your host, Tun Chen.
And I'm your host, Zhao Han, here to share engaging interviews with trailblazing entrepreneurs and investors in AI and beyond. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and check out our latest newsletters at www.aiventurepulse.com.
In today's episode, we have Nirav Chheda, the co-founder and CEO of Bambi, talking about revolutionizing the non-emergency medical transport industry with AI and optimization. Hi, Nirav. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I'm so excited to welcome Bambi on the show. And how are you today?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Duanshan. I'm really excited to be here. It's a bright, beautiful day in Cupertino, California. And despite how beautiful it is, I would still rather be indoors recording this podcast episode with you.
Yeah, that says a lot. Wonderful. So maybe let's get started by introduction of Bambi, what it does and how it got started. Yeah.
Yeah, so Bambi started almost 2 years ago. My co-founder, Charles, he's a software engineer, and his grandfather is wheelchair bound. And so his grandfather needed a specialized wheelchair accessible vehicle to take him to and from medical appointments. And one day, Charles's grandfather got stranded in a medical facility because the transportation company that was supposed to come pick him up, they just didn't show up. They messed up their pickup and drop off. So Charles looked into this whole thing called non-emergency medical transportation. This is this whole industry of all these small businesses that operate these fleets of specialized vehicles that take people to and from medical appointments, people who are wheelchair bound, need stretcher transport or whatever it is. And he found that all of the softwares that are used by these NEMT companies, the non-emergency medical transportation companies, they're all old softwares that are clunky, legacy, whatever. These are the softwares that the NEMT businesses use every day for scheduling rides, doing dispatching, managing their fleet, doing their operations. All the softwares really suck. So Charles said, you know what, Nirav, if we enter this industry and build even a half-decent dispatching software, we could win over a big part of this growing industry of non-emergency medical transport. So I said, okay, let's do it. That was almost 2 years ago. And now we're a team of 10. Most of us are top-notch software engineers that left jobs at big tech companies, successful startup companies, to come and just revolutionize this industry and help NEMT businesses and help patients, get access to healthcare appointments by having more access to reliable transportation.
Yeah, so Nirav, help me better understand this industry 2 years ago. So you said your co-founders, grandparents has experienced this. Is that a common problem or is it like a one-time thing? And when you talk about all those pretty old software each of the companies use, are they all different softwares and how bad they are?
Yeah, so there's over 20, 30 different dispatch softwares specifically for non-emergency medical transport companies. There's so many of them. They all suck. There's a handful of them that are more commonly used because they're the least worst options out there. We wanted to make an option that's not bad. All of our customers, the fortunate ones who discovered us, and we're doing more marketing to make ourselves, more prominent so people discover us. But the ones who have discovered us, they love us. And we love it when someone uses a different software and then they come to Bambi. They're like, oh my God, this is like a world of a difference. This is so much easier to use, so much better. Within, 2 years, we learned this industry, hired a team, figured out what the needs are. We launched our software half a year ago, and now we're onboarding a couple of customers every week.
So why Bambi? Why the name?
So Charles, my co-founder, his mom thought that Bambi could stand for Better Ambulance Intelligence. Me and Charles didn't really think people would make that connection very much, but the name Bambi because it's short, it's cute, and everyone's going to remember it.
Yeah, and I was looking at the website saying run Bambi run. So that's the one click. You can use that one click and the software will run. It will just optimizes the route. Did the phrase run Bambi run come because of the name, or what's the sequence of all that?
Yeah, so first we came up with the name Bambi for the company, and then we realized one of the first things we need to build into the software, and this is still one of the most powerful things about Bambi is, let's say you're a non-emergency medical transportation company. You own 7 wheelchair accessible vans, you have 7 drivers that, take patients to and from appointments every day. Most of your rides are scheduled in advance. So let's say, for example, today's Monday. Let's say tomorrow is Tuesday, and you already know that tomorrow I have 50 rides that I need to complete, and I'm going to have 7 vehicles and drivers on the road. Normally, what you would do is you would have your scheduler or dispatcher, who's a human being, someone you pay, they would spend multiple hours every day figuring out how to assign those 50 trips to those 7 driver schedules. And, they would calculate, oh, here's the pickup and drop off location of this one. Then the driver could go here and do this and that. And, oh, this one needs a wheelchair van. This patient has this need. This driver can't handle a large patient. And they'd have to do all these calculations in their head. It takes them hours, and they don't even do it the best way that makes the fleet most efficient. So we came up with this one click. There's a button called Run Bambi Run. You click that button, and in less than 60 seconds, Bambi runs its algorithms, its AI, and figures out how to assign all those 50 trips to the 7 vehicle schedules in the most optimal way so that the fleet is driving the minimum amount of distance, the most number of trips can be fit in, the most number of patients get a ride.
Yeah, I was wondering about when you're solving this optimization problem, you have several goals in mind. So, for example, reducing costs or fitting in more patients, or let's say just one goal in mind. I was wondering about which one was the main goal of Bambi. Do you see a difference of focus across all the different, let's say, dispatching companies?
Yeah, totally. That's a great question. So there's one overarching goal that Run Bambi Run tries to solve for with this AI algorithms. Like in this example I gave you, where you have 50 trips and 7 drivers to assign those trips to for the day. Run Bambi Run is going to try to figure out, how do we assign the most number of trips to the fleet schedule? And maybe the solution will be that, hey, you know what? You can only do 45 out of these 50 trips, and you'll have to reject 5. But the human being dispatcher, they may be only able to figure out a way to actually assign 40 of those trips. So Bambi figures out how to assign the most number of trips. And I mean, as a consequence of it doing that, it's going to make it so that the fleet as a whole is driving the minimum amount of distance to complete all those trips. So the whole goal is you want the vehicle to spend as much time as possible moving around with a patient inside the vehicle, and as little time moving around without a patient inside the vehicle. So it's basically increasing the vehicle utilization, minimizing the distance. And the extra cool thing about this goal is that, let's say in this example, you have 50 trips and 7 drivers. If Bambi can figure out a way to do all those 50 trips with only 6 drivers, it'll do that. And then the NEMT business will say, hey, we actually don't need this 7th driver driving tomorrow. Like, we don't even need to have that driver on tomorrow's schedule.
Mm.
And there has even been cases where, some of our customers have realized, hey, look, I don't need as many drivers as I thought I did, which is less often the case because, these businesses, they're just, they tend to operate, pretty tight, right, with the number of drivers. But a lot of them are finding like, hey, we can get all the trips done with, one fewer driver on the road.
Yeah. Yeah, I do read an article a few months ago saying that non-EMT drivers, there's a shortage of that.
Yeah, it's, I hear this all the time. The labor problems in our, economy right now, it's hitting every industry. Every industry says it's hard to hire workers, right? And the NEMT industry is no exception. So, I've talked with at least 1,000 different there are 20,000 NEMT businesses across the country and growing rapidly. I've talked with at least 1,000 of them. Almost every single one says that, yeah, hiring is one of the hardest problems we have. Like, we just can't find enough qualified candidates who want to be non-emergency medical transport drivers at our business. So, our software is helping them in one of the hardest hitting areas, which is like, how do we still do so many trips without as many drivers, with fewer drivers on the road, with drivers working not as many hours as we would like? How do we make our schedules most efficient to fit in the most number of trips? So that's one of the reasons that, we find it, really resonating with our customers and our potential customers who are interested in Bambi. Like, wow, you can do more with the assets that you have, without having to hire more.
Yeah. I was wondering from 2 years ago, let's say, when you started to tackle this problem, do you see any companies that are working in the intersection of AI plus optimization plus this problem?
Oh, yeah. I mean, plenty of companies, even, like those legacy softwares in our space, a lot of them will claim to have something like this. None of them actually work. I talk with customers of all these other softwares, and they all say, yeah, those systems, they don't even work. So when they talk to us, they're skeptical because they've heard this from other companies before. And we have to, show them and give them proof, like, hey, look, here's a demonstration of it. Then they start believing, okay, maybe these guys are for real, because a lot of other companies will say they have something like this, but it's not an easy thing to do. It's not easy to build the systems, build the AI, and it's not easy to integrate it into the software, into a user experience that's actually easy to use. We focused really hard on solving both of those problems, and it's been paying off for us.
If you have to pick one area that you're doing that's different from the rest of the other companies that really sets you apart, what do you see that one part is?
When we were in the process of designing our software, we talked with hundreds of our potential customers, these non-emergency medical transport businesses, and we realized, our customers, they're not the most tech-savvy people out there, right? Their work is doing medical transportation, getting passengers, putting them in, and they do a good job at that. They need a software that's easy to use. A lot of them told us when we were asking them how it should work, they said, Nirav, just make the damn thing easy to use. So that was our overarching theme. We invested a lot in designing our software to be intuitive. We should be able to show our software to a customer no more than 10 minutes, show them how to get trips, do trips, get paid through our software. They know how to do it. So the one thing we have is just ease of use. Kind of like the Run Bambi Run, right? Other companies will claim, oh, we have a schedule optimizer. With us, it's one button. You click Run Bambi Run and everything just happens.
So diving a little bit deeper into the product, from the value chain of NEMT industry, there are few different people involved in here. It can be the driver, it can be the dispatcher, it can be the company. So how does Bambi work? Does it work with all of those layers? What are the main problems in each layer that you're solving?
This industry, non-emergency medical transportation, it's either an industry that you don't know anything about, but if you do know about it, then you tend to know a lot about it, because that means that you have a grandparent or a relative who needs these services, and then you have to really figure out how to get them non-emergency medical transport services. There's a lot of different ways that it can work, but at a high level, you have someone who needs a ride. And this is typically someone who's disabled or elderly. Let's say they're wheelchair bound. Typically, that's one of the bigger use cases. They're often on Medicaid or Medicare, which is, government paid. So Medicaid or Medicare, they'll pay for the NEMT rides for this, woman named Sally, for example, right? Sally will say, okay, hey, there's someone within my area who's administering this Medicaid benefit that I'm on. It could be a broker company or a facility who's ordering a ride on her behalf, or whoever it is. She'll get in contact with them, and that, broker or whoever will say, okay, let me find a transportation provider to actually get Sally a ride tomorrow to her medical appointment. So the broker will contact, I don't know, 3 non-emergency medical transportation companies in the area. Let's say the third one says, yes, we'll accept this ride and do it. Now, that non-emergency medical transportation company is Bambi's customer. They're using Bambi software to manage their business. So the ride will come in and, whether it be through an Excel file or add a trip form or whatever, they'll input that ride into Bambi. And there's an owner of the NEMT business. Typically, they'll hire at least one dispatcher, someone to do the billing, and they'll hire a couple of drivers to actually operate the vehicles. The dispatcher is going to say, oh, okay, a new ride request has come in. Let me put it into Bambi. And they'll do that a bunch of times. They'll just keep, getting all these requests, however, getting them into Bambi. And then they'll say, okay, I've got 5 drivers on the road tomorrow. And they'll schedule, okay, Bob, Jim, Ray, they're driving tomorrow from, 8 a.m. until 6 p.m., whatever it is. And then they'll say, okay, we have all these trips. Now I got to figure out how to put all these trips onto Bob's and Ray's and Jim's schedules. Now, of course, with Bambi, they'll click Run Bambi Run. It'll all be done instantly. They'll make some manual adjustments if they want to. Oh, actually, I want to move this driver or this trip over here to that driver or whatever it is. And then when the next day actually comes, Bob is going to open up the Bambi driver app and he's going to say, oh, look, I've got a trip for Sally today. So he's going to go drive over to Sally, tap on his Bambi driver app. Oh, I'm at the pickup. He's going to transport her, tap him at the drop off, get her signature on the phone. And in real time, as he's doing that, the dispatcher is going to see, oh, yeah, I can see Bob's vehicle. Oh, he's getting delayed. I can see that. Oh, okay. Like now the trip is in progress. Oh, is there anything that needs to be done? They'll manage that. Sally gets dropped off. And then however, they need to bill Medicaid for doing the trip, it'll happen through Bambi. They can submit an invoice, process credit card, send a report, whatever it is. That's pretty much the main flow.
Yeah. Do you think about expanding the flow? For example, maybe in the future, tapping into brokers on level on top of the transportation provider. Let's say in the future, Sally, let's say the patient or the client just need to kind of submit when she needs something and then going through that flow. Do you think that's a better solution?
Definitely. And actually, this is transitioning us into what I think is the most exciting part is where the company is headed. So think about this medical transportation market. There's a supply side of rides. Those are the transportation companies. They're actually supplying the rides. Then there's the demand side of rides, which is what you just described, right? Like Sally needs a ride, the broker's requesting a ride, people are demanding rides. Right now, Bambi has made software for the supply side. What we're really excited about is that in the future, what we're planning to do is build software for the demand side to be able to order rides directly through the Bambi ecosystem that goes to the supply side and connect everything. So that's, that was this plan of the company from the start. Start with the supply side, aggregate supply, and then you can go and turn on demand. We don't have an exact timeline on it yet, but we're optimistic that within the next year, we can take the first steps in releasing a platform for the demand side and getting the ecosystem connected.
Yeah, the Uber and Lyft of NEMT.
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. One quick thing, I think it's really interesting. You mentioned about the ease of use. There's another area of ease of use on the pricing side. So you guys only have one price. It's for all the companies and for all the cases. I
Yeah.
wonder how you guys come to that decision about making it so easy.
So we wanted everything about Bambi to be simple. So our product is simple and easy to use. We also wanted our pricing to be just as simple and easy to understand. And we looked at all of the other legacy softwares that we would be beating out, and they all had complicating pricing models. Like, oh, we charge per trip this and per vehicle this and setup fee of this and onboarding fee of this and customer support fee of this. And oh, if you want this extra feature, it's this, that, and that feature costs it. And by the time you get to the end of it, like you have no idea what you're paying for and how much. And it's so confusing. And This is what all of our potential customers told us. So we wanted to be the opposite of that. And our goal is to win over the majority of non-emergency medical transport companies. We don't care about trying to squeeze out as much money as we can from every individual customer. We want to win over all the potential customers that are out there. And this is just, a real big leg up in making that happen faster. We get a lot of referrals. Our customers, they just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to tell my friends about you guys. And that's how Bambi has really been sort of exponentially growing in the past few months. So, interestingly, in the past 2 years, this didn't exist when we started the company 2 years ago, but now there are a handful, actually even more than a handful, of social media influencers in the NEMT industry. They put out educational videos on, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. There are lots of Facebook groups, and these people, they're like, they have their own brands. They're consultants. They consult NEMT businesses. They have consult on starting your business, how to improve your operations, and all this kind of stuff. So we, Bambi, have been able to basically build relationships with pretty much all of these influencers in the space. And, they've learned about Bambi. They really like us. They really like our product. We have personal relationships. So they're helping to spread the good word about Bambi. And also, about half a year ago, I started doing a podcast called NEMT Experts under the Bambi brand. And I basically interview people who are experts in the industry, people in all parts of the industry, people who focus on NEMT insurance and they sell NEMT insurance, people who, hey, I help NEMT business hire drivers. Hey, I'm a consultant for NEMT businesses. And I've interviewed a lot of people who are influential in the industry, and a lot of NEMT businesses who are young, they're starting up, they're new to the industry, they watch my podcast and they watch the channels of all these other influencers when they talk about Bambi. This industry right now, it's like a $10 billion industry. It's projected to more than double over the next, 10 years, because you have the entire baby boomer generation that's now getting into the age range where they need these non-emergency medical transport services. So demand for NEMT services is just increasing rapidly. And, supply is having a hard time catching up. And that's why, you see it's hard to find NEMT businesses to fulfill all the rides that need to be fulfilled. So you see lots of new NEMT businesses popping up every day all across the country. It's an industry that's just ballooning. So there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, I wonder what is the biggest challenge you envision going forward, let's say this year and 5 years from today?
Well, I mean, for Bambi, I would say our biggest challenge is, we have so many customers knocking at our door and they say, oh, we want to use Bambi, but can you build this in? Can you build that in? And it's we want to build everything that everyone's asking. It just takes time. And we have, a team of the best software engineers that anyone could ever hope for. But building good software takes time. We're racing to build more things to enable ourselves to serve more customers. I think the other side of your question is what's the biggest challenge for the industry? I think for the industry, it's basically solving this problem of you have so many people demanding rides, and there is a certain amount of money allocated to, paying for those rides, but how do you get enough supply to properly meet that demand? And, a lot of times transport companies, they'll find hey, you know what? There are all these ride requests coming in, but I don't want to do this ride request and I don't want to do that one because they don't pay enough. I can't even break even. I can't even be profitable as a business if I do these ride requests. So there needs to be some sort of fundamental change in the industry that actually pays transport companies what they need to get paid in order to do rides and still, break even and be profitable as businesses. And I think those fundamental changes are going to be coming. There's industry associations, the main national one is called NEMTAC, and they're working on building standards in the industry that transportation providers have to meet, and compliance, and building in more regulatory sort of compliance standards that are just going to make the industry be able to move in a better direction. Because right now there's just a lot of like, hey, in California, people do things like this. In Idaho, people do things like that. In New York, and it's sort of very disjointed. But I think once the entire industry is operating on a common set of standards and frameworks, it'll be easier to make the positive changes that are needed.
Great. I wonder, it's more of a personal question to you. So what would you be doing if you're not doing this?
That's a good question. And honestly, it's one that I have not even thought of. I've never been asked, never thought of it. If I weren't doing this, I don't know. I mean, before Bambi, I had worked for a couple of different startups for a while, doing business operations, product management. I left my last job. I was at a startup called Codecademy, and after we had gotten acquired by a public company, I was ready to move back into the startup world. I mean, that's where I liked to be, and that's the time that Charles, my co-founder, came and said, "Hey, we should start this software for NEMT," and so we did this. But had that not happened, I have no idea what I'd be doing right now. But I'm pretty sure it would be either at a startup or a startup of my own.
Yeah, it's great that you never thought of this problem. It's like you have no second route.
No end in sight for me. Like I am just such a big believer. I mean, obviously I'm the, co-founder and CEO, but I'm such a big believer in what we're doing and the needs in this industry. This is where I am, and I don't think of anything else.
What's your goal for Bambi, let's say in 10 years, in 5 years?
In 5 years, I want every single non-emergency medical transport company in the United States to be clicking Run Bambi Run. And I want most NEMT rides to be ordered through Bambi's ride ordering system. And I really think we can get there because there's such a need for it in this industry, and there's no good solutions out there.
What about 10 years?
10 years, I don't know, should I be ringing the bell at the New York Stock Exchange?
Yes.
You got to dream big to be big, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's all for today's episode with Nirav.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended as financial or investment advice. We do not guarantee the accuracy, completeness, or timeliness of the information presented. This podcast is not an offer or solicitation for the purchase or sale of any financial instrument. Thank you for subscribing and see you again soon.